Welcome back to Third Man In. I'm Zack Phillips, and in today's post-game stream, not tonight, but today, this afternoon, we're going to be breaking down game number 54 of the Toronto Maple Leafs regular season, defeating the St. Louis Blues 4-1 here tonight. Goals from Matthew Nyes, Austin Matthews, William Nylander, and of course, why wouldn't Bobby McMann get on the score sheet? Prolific goal scorer for this Maple Leafs team during this last four-game stretch while William Nylander's been out of the lineup. He's been called upon due to some injuries, due to some illnesses, and he has risen to the occasion. Not just showing, you know what, he's a gritty guy. He can get involved in the play, make an impact every shift or every period he's out there. But on top of that, the fact that Bobby McMann has now shown that somehow, some way, he's a goal scorer, scoring a hat trick, getting 2 goals, getting another one here tonight against the Blues. 6 goals, I believe it is now, in his last 4 games played. Coming into it, he had about 2 goals ahead. So, Bobby McMann, absolutely electric, but this Leafs team here winning 4-1 tonight. It was an exciting one for this Leafs team. Basically, the first period felt slow, it felt sluggish, but it felt that for both teams. It was a little bit concerning because you feel like, hey, it's a 1 o'clock game. You're going to have that built-in excuse. You had JT, who was coming back from some minor injury, as they were saying ahead of time, and you're looking at this one wondering if he's going to be able to play. You don't know how the lineup's being prepared for it or kind of being adjusted ahead of time due to that. And then you see some lineup changes. I mean, we're looking at a projected lineup here tonight. Nyes, Matthews, Marner, McMann, Tavares, Nylander, Bertuzzi, Domi, Robertson. We did see some different points in time throughout this game where it became a little bit more fluid. You saw Tavares playing in that second line, moving himself into a different line there where it would be Nylander with Domi and Bertuzzi, Tavares playing with McMann and Robertson, so kind of away from that second line. Robertson taking over for that spot and just flipping with Nylander there, and then kind of just getting a different look, which is something that we've proposed earlier on this season. I remember having calls with people calling in to talk about lineups and what you might do here, especially given the way Tavares' play has kind of dropped off a little bit at 5-on-5, and the fact that you can't just honor guys' ice time or give them ice time because of who they are or what their name is or how much money they're making. You can't just say, hey, you know what, you make $11 million, $11.5 million, so we're going to play you like this. There are points in time where you have to assess your team based on how they're playing and who they are right now, not who they've been throughout their career. And at this point, it might just be realistic for this Leafs team to kind of dial back John Tavares' minutes a little bit throughout the regular season. In the playoffs, it might be something where you could turn it up. You can put him into the second line. You could play him against tougher matchups. But right now, during an 82-game schedule, for the final 7 games remaining on this season, 28 games remaining on this season, maybe you just don't need to force feed it. Maybe you could kind of give Tavares that break and say, you know what, you don't need to be out there 21, 22 minutes a night. You don't need to be running out against some of the top offensive matchups on the other team. Put you in a third line role. The other thing that it does is kind of shapes out this lineup a little bit more where it becomes a little bit harder to match up against. The other team looks out there and they go, oh, there's the Matthews line. Put our best defensive line out there. Okay, now you've handled that problem. Now the second line comes out and it's got Domi, Bertuzzi, and Nylander. All guys who are capable of scoring, all guys who are capable of creating offense, and you know what, they've been a little bit more defensively reliable. So you say, okay, we got to be aware of that unit offensively. Let's put out our second best defensive line. Now you're going to have your third best defensive line against John Tavares and Nick Robertson, who are the two that I would look at as the more top end offensive guys on that line. But somehow now Bobby McMann has entered the conversation and become yet another player in there who's able to score. Who knows how long this lasts, but for the time being, you kind of have now spread things out amongst 3 different lines, all 3 kind of capable of scoring. And that fourth line tonight, I think they look pretty good. Aside from Reeves' penalty that he took, where he actually probably should have got one ahead, where he got the hook that went unnoticed or uncalled, then it goes down the other way and gets his stick caught up in the defenseman's feet. He probably should have got the first one, so you knew that that second one was going to come. It had to come. And when it does, it ultimately ends up in St. Louis's first goal of the game. So it's unfortunate for Reeves to have that happen because I think the fourth line was playing pretty well into it. I think it was playing pretty well ahead of this game here tonight as well over the last 3-game stretch leading up to this with Riley being out as well. But nonetheless, I think that we kind of saw a pretty good game from this Leafs team, top to bottom, all the way through. I think Samsonov looked pretty good. The first goal, I don't blame him at all. It was going wide. It hits Liljegren in the pants and goes in, and it ends up actually going in like short side on him as well. So it's like, even with that being said, like it's not like it was deflected into a position where he probably could have got it. I don't think it was that accessible. So no issues really from Samsonov. The final, or the St. Louis second goal, I mean, I'm not really going to blame him here. It's a 6-on-5. Bertuzzi misses the empty netter, sails it over. It's just kind of been that season from a scoring perspective for Bertuzzi. So it is what it is. I'm glad that he was able to get that goal the other day. Breaks that monkey, or takes the monkey off of his back. Hopefully it can kind of open things up for him a little bit more going forward. I think he played well here tonight. He just misses that empty net. So, I mean, we've got some people in the chat who just want to see soft hockey and want to see this Leafs team lose in the first round. They're looking for Dennis Malgins, Pierre Engvalls, and those kinds of players here on this team. I think those people are going to be sadly mistaken when it comes to playoffs, and you see the kind of impact that this guy makes, because these are the people who are just reading score sheets at the end of the night and seeing a guy didn't have points or didn't have goals, and not seeing the actual impact that these players make on the game. Because when you're looking at this lineup, how they're constructed now, this is a more playoff ready lineup. I don't think that they're playing as well right now as they have in years past, but I think that the common understanding amongst this fan base and the media here has been that these signings that were made in the offseason, specifically with guys like Bertuzzi and Domi, they're not regular season signings. These are playoff signings. So you're expecting these guys to be impact players in the playoffs. I think that's what they will be. I think that will come. The other part of this is that Tyler Bertuzzi has made a lot of money in his career from being the net front guy on Power Play 1, playing with higher end players, being in that position to fight in front of the net, get in screens, get that dirty, like grimy part of the game, being a part of that, being in the mix from that perspective. And he hasn't had that opportunity here in Toronto. He plays 15 to 20 seconds a night on the power play. He's not out there with those top-end guys who are going to be able to facilitate and create those opportunities for him to the same extent as he had when he was playing in Boston on that power play unit as well. So it's now nice to get to see him get that opportunity. I think that this is one of those ones where tonight, regardless of what you think about how the power play worked, if they scored, whatever, I think you got to run this back with it, because it also makes your power play a little bit more dynamic when you go from unit 1 to unit 2. What if you've got your big boys out there? You've got Matthews, Marner, Nyes out there on the ice. You pull the goalie because you got a penalty coming. You send Nylander out there. These guys have now been out there for 30, 45 seconds. And now you're going to expect them to go out and play a minute and a half, a minute 45, and then put out the second line. Now you can have some diversity amongst your power play where you can put another unit out there for 30, 45 rather than 15, 20. You can put them out there for 45, a minute even if you have to, get a whistle, and then get your top unit out there. You can change how it looks. You could put the second unit out first and then put the first unit after, because you can be a little bit more well-balanced when it comes to this power play. I also think that if you're going to try to maximize getting the most out of a player like Bertuzzi, who you signed in the offseason there, then maybe using him how he's been used in the past and how he's found success in Detroit and how he found success in Boston might be a smart decision. Because just having the guy come here and decide, you know what, you're not the type of player, or we're not going to have you be this type of player here. We want you to be a different player. Well, when it doesn't work, then maybe you have to look internally and say, what is it that we are asking of him that's not working? Because you see it throughout his career. He plays one way. He's an effective player. He's a useful player. And then he comes here. He's not used on the power play. He's kind of pushed into a different role. It looks like he gets neutered a little bit in terms of the spice that he brings to the game, the intensity that he brings to the game. So he takes that out, and now he's a different player than what he was before. So to me, it wasn't that surprising that things weren't really working out that way. But then you see it on the flip side. All of a sudden, he's being asked to do a little bit differently. He's been asked to play in a different role, and I think things are working for him. I think he's looked a lot better recently, and I want to see this continue with him on the power play here. I do want to see him continue on this power play unit. I think it'll work. Flailing around trying to talk shit against Leafs fans who haven't panicked like him. I'm not panicked. I don't think the whole time I've been panicked. I think we're realistic. I still don't think that this team is that great. And here we go, because you want to get into the conversation of it. I had people talk to me about like, oh, the Leafs are buzzing. I think that the way that they've played in these last few games it has been pretty solid. Like, you look at the game against St. Louis, that first game, incredible defensive game that they played there in the first game that Riley is out. Very, very good, very strong defensive play for them. You hold St. Louis to 15 shots. That's the lowest that you've held a team to on the entire season. It's probably your best defensive performance of the year. Then you go into the game against Philadelphia. I don't think it's been that great. That game was that great. I think for basically 40 minutes of that game, it wasn't really there, but you had Austin Matthews take over the entire game in the second period, put the team on his back, and score 3 goals there in a 20-minute span to get the natural hat trick, take a 3-1 lead, and give the team a bit of a cushion. Then it rolls over into the third period. How they acted, or how they played in the third period there, it kind of tapered off a little bit. Philly's able to come back, and then Nylander decides, I'm going to end this thing when it gets to overtime. Then you look at the game on Saturday against Anaheim. Commanding win all the way through, from the start to the finish. This game here tonight, slow first period. Yeah, it's at 1 o'clock, but you got to find a way. You have to find a way to show up in these games. You've got injuries, you've got illnesses, you've got suspensions. Find a way. Find a way to win this game and clutch this one out. You do here, so you're happy with that, but let's also be realistic about this. The teams that I just listed are not world beaters. They are not top-end teams in this league, so you have to take some of this with a grain of salt. You played St. Louis, you played the Flyers, you played Anaheim, and you played St. Louis again. Philly obviously is currently sitting in a playoff spot, but the other 2 teams that were just named there are not. They're not that great of teams. St. Louis obviously had a little bit of a heater, but so does everyone. San Jose had a heater. Anaheim has their own heater at some point. They're like these other teams throughout the league. They get on their own little heaters that go on for a couple of games. I'm just not really ready to buy back in on this Leafs team. I think you have guys like Austin Matthews and William Nylander who could take over at any given moment and kind of just decide, you know what, we're going to win this game. We're going to dominate here. Forget it. I'm not losing to Anaheim tonight. I'm not losing to the Flyers tonight. So I don't know. I'm not really ready to just jump back in on this team and say like, oh yeah, they're going to be contenders here. I think that the way you can kind of take away these games is they played well in them. We can be happy that you came away with wins in each of these games here as well, especially considering who you're missing and the fact that you are missing a bunch of people here as well. But over this last stretch, I just think that this is not something to take away from and be like, oh, this team is rocking now. This team is ready to go. Let's see how they perform now against some of the higher end teams. You're going to have Arizona on Wednesday. You should be able to roll through that. But then on Thursday, you're going to play against the Vegas Golden Knights. That's a top end team. Saturday, you're going to play against the Colorado Avalanche. I want to see how they fare in those games. I want to see if they're able to continue. Not even necessarily saying that they're going to win those games, but more, are they going to be able to kind of keep this level of play? It's not even about are you going to just, I don't know. Are you going to roll through and go on a 7-8 game win streak? Nobody's really asking that of you. I don't think that should be the expectation of this team, but I think that with how they're performing right now, you should be able to expect that they continue this level of play. Even if they result in some losses here coming up, I think most importantly for people, how are they playing? How are they playing in these? That's what I want to look for. I want to look for this coming out of this stretch because these just haven't been that great of teams. And I think Wednesday is going to be another one here against Arizona. But then you're going to flip right to the other side and go against some higher end competition. All right, that'll kind of do it for some of the opening monologue. We'll continue to read stuff in the chat, read some of the notes that I had for this game. I do want to get to some super chats here. I also want to remind people, if you are watching right now and you haven't already, please subscribe here to the channel, like this stream, turn on notifications so you get notified every single time we go live here on this channel. We will have plenty of content coming out. You won't want to miss live shows, watch-alongs, post-games, anything like that, videos that are dropping. Make sure you're subscribed. Like the stream here today. We're 21 likes away from your smelling salts that you guys want me to do every single time. So we'll get there. But thank you guys for the support. Hit the like button. Subscribe here to the channel. Let's keep it going. I appreciate everyone showing up. Midday stream as well. Feels weird to do a stream while it's still light outside. I'll tell you that. Let's get to some super chats. All right. Super chat first and foremost, Max Entius Decimus. Burt missing the empty net sums up his season so far. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the offensive outlook, the offensive production that we've got from Bertuzzi, that was just like a, oh my God moment. He gets away into the neutral zone. I thought he played a pretty good game leading up to that. Gets the chance, just crosses center ice and goes dead center of the net, but somehow puts it over the net. Like, I think that the offensive production just hasn't been there, but I think if you watch the way that he's played over the last month, it's picked up. There's obviously some stuff that's missing, but there's probably frustration that's creeping in his game too, because all he hears about online is that he's not scoring. He hears about people getting in his ear about how he shouldn't be here. Maybe you should trade him at the deadline. I think that this is ridiculous. I think that this regular season's not what he's brought here to do. I think that Toronto just kind of evaluates players under a microscope, and that can kind of alter your opinion on some of these guys. One of the things that we heard about with the Washington Capitals and their general managers that they've talked about for a while was that you build kind of two different teams within the regular season. You obviously, or during a season, you build a team that is going to be capable enough to make the playoffs, get themselves there, kind of have that underlying ability to be a tough team to play against. It's going to be a tough team to go head to head with. But those guys are probably not going to be your most impactful players. They chip in here and there. They can make an impact on the game every now and then, but they're not that consistent doing that. When it comes to the playoffs, those are the guys that you're going to step up, or you're going to expect to step up and kind of be these unsung heroes. They're going to be the guys that step up into the game and are guys who can piss people off, draw people into penalties, draw your own team into the fight, maybe find ways to score that greasy goal that a guy like Austin Matthews or William Nylander isn't necessarily going to score that often. It's the guy who goes to the front of the net, battles away, and buries a rebound. Those are the kinds of players that they are. I think that's what Bertuzzi and Domi are going to have. It's tough to see this happen. I think it just lets people pile on to what's going on, because then they're going nuts in here in the chat in the post game saying trade this guy, just kind of exposing a lack of knowledge of how hockey works, especially when it comes to playoffs. Because for the last 8 years, we've kind of run around as Leafs fans patting ourselves on the back for just being able to get to the playoffs. And now it's going to be time for things to change here. You had Brad Treliving come in and say, we're going to change things up. I hope it works for him. I hope he's able to score some more goals down the stretch. I hope that tonight doesn't kind of revert him back to where he was before, when he was in that ridiculous stretch where he was kind of losing minutes, getting sat down on the bench, all that kind of stuff. I hope that doesn't happen with Bertuzzi after this empty netter, because that's probably going to be pretty dejecting. But I like the way he played here tonight, and I think he's been doing pretty decent. So I'm not like smashing panic button like some people in the chat here who just for some reason want to be angry just about one player. It is what it is. More super chats. All right. Jeff McKay, thank you for the super chat there, Jeff. I appreciate it. As always, Jeff says, I think if they keep this effort up to the deadline, I would say make a trade for D, only if they can keep up the effort. Okay, here's my thoughts. The way I've been watching this team and what's going on, there's a couple of things that I think Sheldon Keefe better keep consistent moving forward, even when players come back from sickness and injury. Some of them I'm going to try to not be harsh about, but it is reality in my opinion. If you guys disagree, fair enough. Feel free to message me on Twitter, Instagram, Discord, whatever it is. We can call and talk about these in these post-game shows as well. But first and foremost, I would look at is that I don't think Mark Giordano should be a constant in this lineup. You obviously have to find ways around that and ways that you can kind of filter in some other players here. But like, if you can have Morgan Riley hop back in here, Gio's a guy who doesn't stay in your lineup. I think that that's ideal, because what we've noticed about Gio over the last little while is that Sheldon Keefe has this reliance on him where he's willing to or wanting to play him for extended periods of time every single game, put him against these tough matchups, and I think it's kind of wearing him down. I think that the length of the season is starting to wear him down as well, especially at this age. I don't blame him. It is what it is. You're what, almost 40 years old. It's going to wear down on you, but we're just kind of seeing within the season that it's not being there for him. He's not being the player that he first was when he got here to Toronto. I think it's kind of taking away from his D partners. I think it's a little bit distracting there with what we're seeing with him. I would just probably avoid having him in the lineup as much as possible. You could obviously use him, but Keefe likes to use him as a constant. I think he should probably be a rotational player kind of on the exterior looking in. Not consistently there, but just kind of around, veteran leadership, veteran presence, and then in and out of the lineup as things go. The other thing I would have that I think is very, very clear, it was first and foremost pointed out by Anthony Petrielli, so credit to him. We talked about it in the stream the other day, but it's just becoming more and more obvious. I think TJ Brodie needs to play on the left side. I think he has to play on the left side, and I don't think it's that ridiculous to kind of say like, oh, this guy is much, much better or much more comfortable over there. I don't know if it's having to try to compensate for some lack of defensive ability from Morgan Rielly. I don't know if it's just that he just doesn't like playing the right side or isn't that good playing the right side or whatever. But whatever the situation is for him or how he views it, it's just not really been working there over the last little while. We've talked about constantly how it feels like Brodie's game has kind of dropped off a little bit. Like we're seeing these steps of deterioration, and whether it's a step behind or a step behind in thinking or whatever it is, but it's felt like Brodie's game just hasn't been what it once was. Now, before this little stretch without Rielly here, it was kind of like, hey, we're going to probably have to unload that money if you can. If not, you just make it work. You go with what you have into the playoffs and then see what you can do and like how you can stretch this out. Where I'm at right now with what we've seen of him over the last 4 games is that he goes on the left side. I think Timothy Liljegren has also looked good over the last few games, which is also strange to me because if you guys remember back to last season when Morgan Rielly was out for an extended period of time, the guys that we looked to and constantly kept saying and thinking like, wow, these guys have really stepped up. These guys are playing really well, like filling in this role really well, taking over the fact that you're filling in a guy who's playing 24, 25 minutes a night. He's playing on your first power play. He's playing on penalty kill. He's playing late game situations. Well, Liljegren and Sandin were the ones who really stepped up and kind of stood out to a lot of people as like, hey, those guys elevated their game. They were reliable, and they actually made a very serious, strong impact on the game every single night in a positive light. Then Rielly comes back. Sandin and Liljegren's games start to fall off a little bit. Their minutes go away. The confidence Sheldon Keefe has in them goes away. And then ultimately Rasmus Sandin gets traded. Now you look at Liljegren, he's in a position where the confidence felt like it continued to dip off. We saw him not really be relied upon, not really be trusted by Keefe. It feels like he's kind of always on the outside looking in of situations. Now Rielly goes out, Lagesson goes out. You've got a couple injuries there. Giordano's not playing. So now Timothy Liljegren's thrusted into a role where he's got to play more minutes, more important minutes. He's playing alongside TJ Brodie there, which seems to be kind of a calming factor for him for both parties. They seem to go well together there. Timothy Liljegren also looking good along the right side with Brodie on the left. Like that pairing seems to be fine. I saw another tweet here during the game tonight. I was between one of the intermissions, and this is where it's got me started to think about with what Jeff's saying. I've very, very, very much been in the party of you can't just go all in because you have Austin Matthews. You can't just go all in because you have a guy who's projected to score over 70 goals this year. I get the excitement around it, but that doesn't mean that this team is necessarily poised as of right now to go on some long run. Now, obviously, you need to get into the playoffs and you need to start to get things cooking a little bit. You continue to build that unity as a team. You continue to stick up for each other, and I think things can start to work in your favor, especially if you get rolling. We saw an 8-seed LA Kings go on and win the Stanley Cup. We saw an 8-seed Florida Panthers make it to the finals. Like, this is not out of the realm of possibility for these guys to be able to accomplish this. But what I would say is I still would not be right now looking to go crazy and add on this team at the deadline. I think you have gone and you have made big trades and added mass amounts of pieces and gotten rid of first round picks, second round picks, third round picks, prospects every year for effectively the last 3-4 years. And it's not worked out for this team. At some point, when you're looking at a team that's probably better built for the playoffs, but not playing that well right now, this is obviously a little bit tough because you can't look at a 4-game sample size and say, well, they are playing really well. They won 4 in a row. I get that, but I just don't think you're as close as you maybe need to be, and I feel like this is a tinker situation. I wanted to avoid the idea of going out and trading for people, but I'm now kind of in the position where I think that if you have a guy like Giordano playing so much and you have these guys, you have to put Brody back up there, then your defensive play, the way that the team is just going to be set up in a way that's not going to be positioned for success. Here's what I do. What's the one style of player that we've seen get the most out of Morgan Rielly over the last while? Ron Hainsey and Luke Shen. Those guys play a very, very calming style of play relative to what Morgan Rielly does. It feels like TJ Brody was trying to do too much there on that pairing. I don't think Jake Gardiner was ever the ideal partner for him there. Zaitsev, those guys, like they're not those kinds of players to be able to support what Morgan Rielly is or does. A strong stay-at-home defenseman might be the ideal pickup for this Leafs team that can play alongside Morgan Rielly. Get a tough guy who blocks shots, plays stay-at-home D, has no interest, no involvement in the offense, and is likely going to be fairly cheap. I would even be willing at this point to like get a rental defenseman who does that you could probably look at re-upping in the offseason and going after in free agency to see if you want to sign that guy back again. But just based on the fact that those are the types of players that have seemed to go really well alongside Morgan Rielly in the past, gotten the most out of him, and you've kind of seen him have the most playoff success with. It alleviates the lineup a little bit where it's like, hey, you're going to take this guy who's probably cheaper to acquire as well. They can play up in the top there alongside Morgan Rielly, stabilize him, be a calming, comforting partner over there that trust Rielly can trust them, and it just puts everyone at ease. I feel like with Brody up there, he's not comfortable. Rielly probably doubts some stuff. Brody doubts some stuff, and then it just becomes a mess. And we look at Rielly and say, this guy stinks defensively. We look at Brody and say, this guy stinks. Well, when we've seen Rielly play with the right partner, we've been in love with him and his style of play. When we've seen a guy like Brody here now over the last little while, and when we saw it last year when Rielly was out, move into a different role or play the left side there where he looks more comfortable, we've fallen back in love with him. So maybe the solution here is to take the 4 guys that you have right now, Brody, Liljegren, McCabe, Benoit, you shift them down, and you just find yourself a guy who's cheap to acquire, probably cheap salary-wise, and can fit in alongside Morgan Rielly. And I think that sets this team up for way more success than going out and acquiring a top 4 defenseman here at this deadline and forcing it. If you have the ability to go out and get a guy like Noah Hanifin, if that's on the table, if that's there, and you can get some type of extension done, then yes, explore that option. Explore that option for sure. But to me, it's a guy who can play alongside Morgan Rielly, doesn't do too much in his game, probably a pretty simple player, thinks simply, and then can just kind of keep Rielly under control a little bit, where it's like he doesn't have to go the other way and make up for deficiencies of the other guy, and that guy doesn't have to make deficiencies for Morgan Rielly. I see John D'Souza saying we need 3 D-men. John, that's kind of the point that I'm making here, though, is that Are you really going to go out and you're going to acquire 3 defensemen here to make this change? That's why I'm saying I don't think that this makes sense for us to be going all in on this year. I just don't see it. I don't see that being effective. I don't see it being the proper use of assets or like a responsible asset management. I don't. Aaron asking, how much will Tanev cost, do you think, Zach? They're asking for first-round picks. Seems like no one's really interested to give first-round picks for Tanev. I imagine a lot of that would have to do with UFA. The other part of it would be that it's kind of become this thing that it seems like he wants to go back to Vancouver at some point. So even if you trade for him here and he's willing to go to your team, it feels like everyone that's willing to trade for him also knows that you're probably not going to be able to sign him back in free agency, and he's going to move on. He's going to move on and likely look to a team like the Canucks during this summer. So I think that that's kind of where the hesitancy comes from. I also am just kind of in the same boat where I'm like, okay, now you're not going to give up a first. You're going to give up second and third round picks. How many are you going to have to up this to at this point to get Calgary interested in that front? And the other part of it is Tree Living being there. It feels like there's a natural reluctance from Conroy in Calgary to kind of make that trade with Tree Living, probably just from the idea of we don't want to feel like we got fleeced or have the fan base feel like we got fleeced by the former GM. I think that that's probably a factor there that's playing into it, or it seems as though right now it's a factor. The other thing I saw in the chat there was from Aaron Stitch. Aaron saying again as well, would your perspective change if this was a 10-game win streak? Like, okay, it's harder to answer this because yes and no. My perspective changes on should you make any trades, and I just start to look at it from the idea of, can you make some tinkering to make this team a little bit better? I would be willing to do that. I would probably be willing to spend a little bit more on like that extra piece to get a guy for Riley, or the piece to help replace or take minutes away from a guy like Ryan Reeves or whatever, like putting in guys into those positions. But I'm not looking for top 6 forwards. I'm not looking to go out. I'm not making my priority to go out and acquire like these high-end defensemen. I just don't think that that's where it's going to be worth it. I don't think that this is the year that you go all in on this team. And that's not to say that you give up on them or anything, but it's like, I think you can kind of evaluate them by saying, go do it. Like, go show us that you're the players you say you are. Go show us you're as good of a team as you say you are. We'll help you a little bit, but we're not going to go overboard. That's I don't know. That's where I think, like, okay, you go on a 10-game heater here, you're going to face Vegas, you're going to face Colorado in these upcoming games. That'll stretch it to 5 Wednesday, 6 Thursday, 7 Saturday. Like, you win those games, you're on a 7-game heater. I don't think that this changes things as a whole, though, because we also have 54 games, or I guess take away the 4 that they just won, 50 games sample size of looking at this team, the way that they've played, and kind of saying, okay, 50 games versus what your final 32 is. That's kind of the track record that's led us to believe that this team probably is a little bit further away, and has people coming here saying trade Bertuzzi and people coming here saying we need 3 defensemen. Like, it's fair because it feels like you're just not that close. I would just be in more of a position if you go on some 10-game heater, like Aaron's saying there, to be like, okay, maybe I'm a little bit more willing to put some chips in on some of these extra pieces, but I'm not looking to go and spend a first-round pick on Nick Foligno, if that makes sense. A few more super chats here. Zach, over the few years, the Leafs won 80% when Morgan is not in the lineup. If the team piles up more loss when he is back, drop to fighting for a wild card spot. I think people need to be careful with this narrative of like, oh, the team wins more when these guys are out, trade them. The team is above 500 when Austin Matthews is out of the lineup. You want to trade him? Like, we can look at some of these examples of that and say, oh, well, this team wins more when that guy's not here. Trade him. First of all, impact in the locker room. What is that? What does that make? Every single person kind of has this, or feels like 80 to 90% of the people in the chat here, when we come and talk about these Leafs teams after the games and what's gone on, kind of comes away from things being like, oh, Morgan Rielly's the leader, Morgan Rielly's the captain, Morgan Rielly's the front-facing player who does all the stuff in the city, does stuff for the organization, is an outstanding citizen in the city of Toronto, and on top of that has kind of been the driving force from a passion perspective here, especially looking at how he played or how he reacted on that Ridley Gregg incident, and it feels like he's the one who's provided a spark of life into this team. And now we're kind of talking about like, oh, they win more without Rielly, get rid of him, or we could go without him. I think that's a lazy narrative to kind of just say like, oh, you don't like the guy, you don't like him, they've won some games without him, get rid of him. I think you need to be careful in a longer period or longer sample size that you're looking at something small. You're looking at a small sample size from last year, and now you're looking at a completely separate one this year with a different construction of team. And it's something I've talked about before where it's like, it's the Ewing theory effect, right? Like the team steps up in these situations because they know we've got to get it done without this guy here. When Tavares is out, Marner's out, Matthew's out, these guys step up and find ways to get it done without them. I'm sure if you look at each of these guys' records or the team's records when these guys are not playing, there's probably some strange stat that says that they win more when they're not playing than they win when they are. Or, you know what I mean? Like they win more when they're not playing, not necessarily when they're not. The thing for me is just, I think it's a little bit of a lazy narrative to say they win more without them, get rid of them. I also, for some reason, over the last like 2.5, 3 years, have just kind of fallen back into love with the way Morgan Rielly plays. And I think because it's not necessarily about his skill or it's about how great he is defensively or whatever, but there is a very clear sign of passion that I think touches a nerve with a lot of people here in Toronto that kind of makes you feel like that's the player you want to have around this team, because it seems to be one of the pieces that's lacking out of this group over the last 7 years into this 8th season is that over the top, I'm going to play for the name on the front of the jersey and not the name on the back mentality. And it feels like Morgan Rielly's the one who has that. And you see the way he plays in the playoffs. You see how he's kind of handled himself over the last 2 seasons here. I'm kind of bought back in on like, you know what? At some point, maybe not just having the best statistical player on a piece of paper is the ideal way to build your lineup. And I think that having a guy who actually gives a shit is the guy you want to have here. And I think Morgan Rielly does. And I think he's the guy who can inject some life into this team. Also, I want to give you guys some perspective and kind of let you know the context of where I'm coming from on this. The way I view this team now this season has it drastically changed from the way I viewed this team over the past couple of years. And it's also changed from how I viewed this team going into this season. The way I viewed them, I'd say probably the last 4 years, 3-4 years going into this year, was a top contending team, one of the favorites in the betting markets to win the Stanley Cup every year, a team that are very hyped by the media, by scouts, by GMs, by fans, whatever. They get this pressure put on them that I think we as fans, including myself, have all bought into and kind of ignored the fact that there were some drastic... There were some massive, massive pieces missing that actually take you over the top. The other day I was listening to Mike Rupp on the radio here in Toronto talk about this team, and this is kind of a perfect point in terms of the way that the team was constructed and built in the past. He was talking about the Morgan Rielly hit on Ridley Gregg, and he was saying, like, having a play like that and having people act like that and having jam like that, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to have success in the playoffs. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to win the Stanley Cup, but it gives you a chance. If you don't have guys who act like that, if you don't have guys who perform like that, respond, stick up for the jersey, stick up for their teammates, then you actually have no chance. So it's not that having those guys guarantees anything, but it's that rather than not having them and having no chance, you are given some life. You are given an opportunity here to kind of have something where guys can rally around each other, fight for each other, fight for the organization. And I think that that's a really important piece that we've seen built into this team here now. I think that this team is not as good. No. I think that this team, what we've realized this season compared to the past ones, is that this season is probably built better to have success in the playoffs. They're not built as well as they were in the regular season. I would say that. They were just built for points, high-end points, scoring, fast-paced, whatever in the past few years. In the playoffs, that doesn't work. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your thoughts are on where hockey is at in terms of the way the game is developing. If you can't kind of understand that the game is still in a place where you need to be heavy, you need to be physical, you need to kind of be able to win battles and push guys around, push guys off pucks, and not be pushed around yourself, then you will not have success in the playoffs. If you don't realize that's a major important piece for when the going gets tough and when things actually matter, then you are out to lunch in terms of how you are evaluating success or barometers for success when it comes to the playoffs or being able to predict success. This team has that at least this year, but I also just don't think that they've played enough with it from a full buy-in perspective in the regular season. So kind of what I would look at here as you're approaching the deadline is you don't go crazy on this. You make some tinkering moves. You add a piece here or there, and then you let these guys ride in the playoffs. That's the thought for me, kind of how approaching it and where I've been at with this team. I think that this is an above-average team in terms of how they're playing right now. I think on paper they're probably pretty good, but they haven't really proven that to anybody. Prove it. Prove it to me. All right. Another super chat. Super chat here again from Michael. Michael, appreciate it. Michael says they need to add a top D to push them to the top because these players might not be available in the coming 2 years, but no rental, only sign and trade. I mean, yeah, I don't really disagree there. Sign and trade, or getting a player that you can sign after and not having a rental is obviously ideal, but who is that guy? Are they available? How expensive are they going to be? And then the reality on top of it is, how much closer does that guy actually get you to being a Colorado, a Vegas, a Florida? Like, how much do you think it actually brings you that much closer? Because if it doesn't, is it going to be worthwhile for you? That's the other things that you have to evaluate. I feel like they're a little bit further away than they need to be. So when you sit here and say they need 2 top D and they need to add these heavy pieces, like big pieces and stuff, like that's a concerning thought. That's a concerning thing to look at with an organization and be like, oh yeah, this is a contending team. Let's go all in. They need 4 defensemen, a third line center, a second line left winger, a fourth line right winger, a new goaltender. Like, holy shit. If you're going to sit here and look at that, then how can you really tell me that they're a contending team? They're not. At that point, if that's like to hear the conversation of like, do they get a goalie? Okay, there's one thing. That's a problem. Like if you're looking at the New Jersey Devils, the conversation is very clear. You want a goaltender. You're going to get a goaltender. Jacob Markstrom, if that's your guy. But it's very easily identifiable you're going to get that. Out in Colorado, they're probably looking at like a tandem goalie situation, so you need to upgrade on your backup. That's kind of the evident missing piece there. You look at the Rangers, they're looking for a top 6 forward. Each of these teams that I'm kind of picking out and looking at around the league are looking for like one piece, and then it's nice to add something else. The Leafs, every time we have a conversation, it's, do you add another goaltender? Should you find a starting goaltender? Can you find a 1B? Okay, there's the goalie problem. Now, okay, can you find a number 2? Can you find your number 3? Can you find your number 4? Now let's look at the top 6. Can you find a second line left winger? Can you find a Scott Laughton to go in the third line center? Can you find a guy to replace Ryan Reeves? Like at this point, we're just decimating the entire lineup, having to find brand new players to come into this thing. And if that's the takeaway that we have, where we're sitting here saying, oh, we need to overhaul this whole thing at the deadline, it just feels like it's way farther away than people really think or are saying, where you're like, oh, it's a contender, you need to go all in. Well, okay, yeah, you're going all in, but you're going all in on the deadline and not just this team. Like, you're going all in because you're looking at, like, yeah, Matthews is on pace for 70 goals this year. We need to go all in because of that, not because the team's that good. Okay, another super chat here. Super chat, Michael. Again, appreciate it. Michael says, from all the legit scouting reports, Fraser Minton, brackets, Dubas pick, is at best a third-line defensive center, not a blue chip at all. I mean, yeah, we're trying to break down. I appreciate the super chat, Michael. We're trying to break down the game for tonight. I don't know. I don't know enough about it. The other thing is, like, scouts get stuff wrong. Like, I'm not saying that these guys are wrong, or I'm not saying this in defense of Fraser Minton, but, like, he's at Team Canada. He was the captain there. He's doing really well in the WHL right now. He made the team out of camp. Like, sometimes guys can be better than what they're scouted out to be. I'm not saying that he's going to be some first-line guy or anything like that, but, like, Pavel Datsyuk was a 7th-round pick. Zetterberg was 7th-round pick. Like, sometimes scouts just miss stuff or get things wrong. It happens. Look at Boston. Boston drafted Zaboral, Shenishin, and I don't even remember DeBrusk. And then the 3 picks right after them was Barzal, Shabbat, and Kyle Connor, I think. Sometimes you just miss, or you get things wrong, or your evaluation of a player or players as young guys and what they might project out to be could just be slightly off. Or maybe the situation that they get in could be good. The other thing that I would add with Michael's super chat here is, like, we were complaining about Fraser Minton. Like, he's not on the team. He's a prospect. And also on top of that, this goes to my point where you're talking about going all in and trading these picks and trading these prospects. If Fraser Minton is a third-line center and he's going to be here on this team next year, then why the fuck are we going and panicking about trading Fraser Minton to get a third-line center to play on this team right now? Like, that stuff makes no sense to me. You're going to trade a guy that you are projecting to be your third-line center so that you can go and get a third-line center for this year who's going to leave as a UFA? Like, am I the only one failing to understand why that makes sense? Like, that I don't get that. That seems like a completely irresponsible way to manage your assets. It's no good to me. I don't care if he's projected to be a third line player. He could become better. And by the way, you need cheap guys on ELCs. You're going to need that here. Yeah. I don't know. I also see people in the chat saying, like, you need to go for it now. You need to go for it now. This team is not that good to go put all your chips in. Florida last year didn't make one single move at the deadline. The Vegas Golden Knights made, I think, 2 trades at the deadline. One was for Barbashev, which, yeah, was a big enough piece, but it was also on top of that, it was a very pointed need of, like, we need this thing. So you went out and you got Barbashev, and then you added, like, another depth trade that you added in there. I don't even remember if he played. I'm trying to remember what the guy was, but you don't have to go crazy on trades here. If you think your team is good enough, you can make some slight tweaks to just improve it slightly and then rip into the playoffs and let these guys get hot. The other thing I think that this Leafs team has kind of had problems with in the past is what we're talking about here is, like, making all these trades and making drastic moves where you're going to be ripping out guys who are on this team right now, who have been part of this organization for the last little while, mid-season, to go out and add 7 players at the deadline like we've done each of the past few years. Cohesiveness within a group can kind of start to get away from you. You hear about what Ben was saying about this group kind of coming together and having a brotherhood in there. Now you're going to go in and, based on the trades that are being proposed in the chat, which is why I'm pushing back on people on some of this stuff, is like, well, let's trade Bobby McMahon, Holmberg, Reeves, Riley, Brody, Giordano, Max Domi, Bertuzzi, and bring in a whole new cast of guys. And it's like, well, you're going to do that with 20 games left in the season, 18 games left in the season. Like, what are we doing? That's drastic overhaul for guys to kind of get used to systems and everything as you go into the thing. And you're also ripping guys out of here and throwing brand new guys in here. I don't know. The cohesion and stuff, it's important. And every year for the last few years, it feels like we've changed 5 to 8 players at the deadline. And it's been drastic. Final super chat. Yeah, also there's what Chris Arsenal is saying, and I think that this is a good point as well. Cohesiveness has been a constant downfall for this team over the past 4 years. It's felt like these guys don't play with that pride for each other and for the name on the front of the jersey, for sure. So if you're finally developing it and you feel like it's here, I don't understand why we're at a point where here in the chat where people are like, get rid of them. For those of you watching right now who haven't already hit the like button or subscribed here to the channel, please do so. We're at 47 likes here on this stream today. Please continue to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, all that good stuff. Continue to grow this channel and continue to blow things up. We appreciate the support here. Continue to rock. We want to get to 2,500 by the end of playoffs. You guys have been incredible with that, but keep liking, subscribing, all the good stuff. There is a super chat. I played the animation. Michael here says, last few years, I have completely zero faith they can win in the playoffs, so I hate for all Dubas trades. However, I have more trust in this year's team. Yeah, I mean, I had faith in the last few years. I don't really know how to answer this, Michael. Like, the way that they're playing right now, I have less faith than I had in the last few years. The trades that were made, I would be lying to you if I said I wasn't happy about getting Achari, getting Riley, or getting O'Reilly, getting Shen, like getting these guys in here to play. Like, I think that they were good ads. I kind of wish that they were players that you could have got ahead of time or had here for a longer period of time, whatever. It's not the case. They come in late. It just doesn't work, but I would be lying to you if I said I wasn't happy about those trades. Not necessarily there with you in terms of more faith on this team. All right, guys, I do have to wrap this up here. I have to produce another show coming up at 5 o'clock, college football show. Hit the books if you guys are interested in that. Please head on over to Hit the Books YouTube channel coming up at 5 p.m. I will be producing that. I'm not on the show, but I am a producer of it. So hit the like here, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications. But we have a couple things to get to. First and foremost, let's get to our play of the game. Play of the game for me, the Nyes goal. Let's just talk about how stunning things were in terms of actual legitimate highlight reel stuff. I know I've given out a lot to like, oh, gritty plays or playing the right way, whatever it is. This one to me, I'm just straight up going with the Matthew Nyes goal. That was disgusting. Matthews along the wall, battling, gets the puck back, wins the puck battle, makes a nice feed to Nyes, coming, ripping through the zone, in attacking St. Louis net, attacking right on at Parayko, rips all the way through Parayko, gets by him, and then makes a nasty little shot, kind of over goaltender's blocker there, top corner, far side. That was disgusting. Honorable mentions. I will go with the Simone Benoit hit that came right after that, where he absolutely levels the guy. Then I will go with the Bobby McMahon empty net goal, finding a way to win the battle against Torrey Krug, kind of getting a little bit lucky. I thought that potentially could have been a penalty, but gets away with it, whether it was or not, or finds a way to just kind of play on the line without actually getting that penalty. Shout out to Bobby McMahon for that. Finally, honorable mention here. Actually, I'm just gonna go with all the goals here. This is a pretty good slate of goals that we got. The Matthews goal, beautiful pass by Marner. That was also created by Bertuzzi and Marner battling down low to win the puck back. Pass out front to Matthews, who finds himself open in the slot, buries in the soft spot there. Beautiful play by them. And on top of that, the William Nylander goal. Great play by him on the penalty kill to force the turnover around the top of the circle. Outraces the other guys. Pontus Holmberg comes up with him perfectly. They play the 2-on-0. Nylander sneakily, if you watch that play back, you watch it in slow motion, you watch from the other angles, he opens or he turns over his blade So it looks like he's about to make a pass across to Holmberg, and he freezes up his shoulders, which freezes Hofer. Hofer starts to slide across then, anticipating the pass because of what Nylander did. As soon as he does that, it backs Hofer up into the net, and it starts to move him across, and he's got to go back to try to make that save on Nylander, who goes short side on him. Beautiful play by William Nylander. Beautiful goal there. A couple honorable mentions on that. Let's close this thing out with our grades of the game.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
All right. Grades of the game. I'm going to go with an A-. The missed empty net by Bertuzzi obviously was a little bit of a dagger because it felt like it was going to give an opportunity for St. Louis to come back there, especially with them scoring. I think Samsonov had a pretty good night. Nylander, another goal on the board. Matthews, one goal closer to 50 here tonight. Marner's play has looked really good, really complimentary alongside Matthews. And it feels like we're getting Matthew Nyes back into a dominant kind of role here. It feels like his game is finding its step. It's finding its way. We're also seeing this Leafs team play a style of defensive hockey that we haven't really seen since like last year during stretches kind of around Christmas as well, when they went on a little bit of a run there. So we're starting to see that defensive prowess be built into this team. It looks like they're looking good. They're looking out for each other, which looks good. You see them playing with some pride. I'm at the A-. I think that this is a pretty good game. It's a 1:00 game. It's a weird one. You deal with that. Both you and St. Louis are coming in on the same conditions. I don't think it was a bad first period necessarily, but it was not it wasn't very pretty. And then you find a way to get it done throughout the remainder of the game. And as Aaron says there, last few games, the D's looked much better. Find a way to keep it. Agreed. 50 likes. You guys hit it. Thank you, you sickos. I do appreciate it, but you're still insane. Thank you very much. All right, there you go. Smelling salts at 50. Thanks to everyone who watched here today. Thanks to everyone who tuned in for this post-game stream. I appreciate you all. I'm going to figure out what to do for the Wednesday, Thursday games. They both start at 10 o'clock, which in theory would mean that they would end at like 12:45-ish. I do have to work in the mornings. I know you guys do too, so I'm sorry about that. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do. Please like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you get notified. I'm going to put stuff in the community area there so I can tell you guys what we're doing. I'm going to tell you guys what we're doing with those streams. I might do watch-alongs. I need to determine that. I'm supposed to have busy days on Wednesday and Thursday, so I'll try to figure this out for you guys. I apologize, but just wanted to let you know there's a chance that Wednesday, Thursday, there isn't post games. It might be moved up to be watch-alongs. Thank you guys so much for watching here tonight. I do appreciate all the support. I appreciate all the questions, all the comments, all the likes, the subscribers, and on top of that, I appreciate all the super chats. Again, as always, you guys don't have to do that, but I do appreciate it. So thank you very much. That'll do it for the stream here today. Head on over to Hit the Books, college football breakdowns, previews, all that kind of stuff. Head on over to Hit the Books. Thanks so much, guys, for watching. This has been game number 54 of the Toronto Maple Leafs regular season, defeating the St. Louis Blues 4-1 here tonight, moving to 30, 16, and 8 on the season. As always, keep believing.